Welcome to the Made Leader podcast, where exceptional leadership isn't about who you are, but who you choose to become. Join your host, Jen Arnold, for expert interviews, real-world stories, and practical advice that transforms managers into exceptional leaders. If you're a middle manager ready to unlock your potential, this is your podcast. Let's get started.
Hello and welcome to the Made Leader podcast. I'm your host, Jen Arnold. And this is the third time I have tried to record this intro. So fingers crossed this works. Now, if you are a regular listener, you know that I typically interview experts or have a coaching session, but you also know that I like to mix in real leaders, the ones who are actually leading people in the work in corporate America. And today I'm talking to Alexandria Butler, otherwise known as Lexi B. I found Lexi on LinkedIn. She had a post that resonated and I started following her and have been enjoying her writing and her posting. And so I decided to reach out and see if she wanted to be on the podcast. Luckily, she said yes. So let me tell you a little bit about Lexi. Lexi B is a sought-after figure in the tech industry, renowned for her transformative work and exceptional ability to cultivate executive leadership and promote workplace equity. She has an extensive background at prominent Silicon Valley tech companies, and she also has a podcast, Sit with Lexi B, where she discusses the transferable skills that are essential for building the professional life individuals aspire to have. Now, here's a few high-level points of what Lexi and I talked about. First, why being a leader is both an honor and a risk. So we dive into that risk part of leadership. Lexi shares the strategy she used over the years to be successful despite having some poor leaders along the way. Luckily, she has a great one now. Let me just say that. Now, I asked Lexi about the non-negotiables for her as a leader, and she shares that one with us. And it's one that she expects her team to have, and she won't teach it to you. Lexi talks about being a Black woman in tech, how she still navigates it as a leader as well, and why EQ, or emotional intelligence, is one of her superpowers. She shares what still challenges her as a leader, and it's opening up personally at work. Still hard for her, but she is stretching herself to do so. And finally, she leaves us with her advice for the most important thing for you to do if you want to lead in tech or if you want to lead in your industry. Now, before we dive into my conversation with Lexi, I want to share with you a free guide that I have created to help you as a leader gather your team more effectively. So if you are having regular team meetings, I put together a short quiz that you can take to assess the effectiveness of when you get your team together. And then there is a toolkit behind it that will give you things like a meeting agenda template, ways to building connection activities that don't scare people, how to draw your quieter people in, and then also how to have some sensitive conversations if you're noticing that your team members or one team member is distracted. I will link up my 2-minute meeting momentum assessment and then toolkit in the show notes. So if you're interested, just go click on the link, take the quiz, and you will get your score for the quiz, and you will also get the toolkit in your inbox. All right, without further ado, here's my interview with Lexi B. Lexi, welcome to the Made Leader podcast. I'm so glad to have you on today.
I'm so excited to be here, Jen. How are you?
Oh, doing good. End of the day vibes. So this is going to be, hopefully, this will get my energy back up.
Yes.
Talking to you.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed your post on LinkedIn. That's how we connected. So I'm going to definitely link that up in the show notes so people can follow you as well.
Yeah.
Well, Lexi, what does leadership mean to you?
I think leadership means serving people. I think leadership means actively and strategically, I would argue militantly, building profound relationships with people. And I consider it an honor, and I also consider it a huge risk. As a person who has suffered from misaligned leadership, bad leadership, leaders who have, I would argue in many ways, abused me from like this mental and psychological and emotional sense. Leadership is a space that if you are not ready to serve militantly and protect militantly, then you should not be doing it. Yeah.
But it happens, right?
It does
Like, I mean,
happen.
it happens everywhere. It's, I've told you before, it's like it's happened to me, getting me promoted before I really had the people skills or that serving people. But you just said it's an honor and a risk. What did you mean by risk?
It's an honor because I think that watching people grow is so fabulous, right?
Mm-hmm.
And knowing that you're a part of that growth is beautiful. It's also a huge risk because when you mess up, know that you are responsible for someone's professional trauma. And as a person with a lot of professional trauma, that sticks with people. People do not leave companies. They leave management. They leave leaders. And so I make it very clear, being a leader is a huge risk. You should know the stakes are high. You are literally responsible for someone's growth and happiness, or you could be detrimental to that. And I consider that a huge risk. Yeah.
Well, what did you take from those leaders? Like we've all had leaders that were not the best. What did you take from that?
One, what not to do, because I don't want to say that like, thank God I had those horrible experiences. It got me to where I am. While I do think that every experience in your life propels you to what the ancestors and the divine want for you in the future, I do not think that every life journey should be just riddled with trauma. You don't deserve trauma. It happens because life happens, but you are not deserving of it. But because of those experiences, it required me to find other people within the company that would lead me unofficially. Because when you have a bad manager or a bad leader, you still have to get your job done.
Mm-hmm.
And so it requires you to be very scrappy and very resourceful on like, okay, this person doesn't like me. I am a target for whatever reason. And there could be so many reasons, many of them that have nothing to do with you. But I still need to get my job done because I still need this paycheck. So who can help me do that? Who can help me navigate this very uncomfortable, hard situation until I figure out how I want to get out of it, right? And then also, who can help me get out of it?
Mm-hmm.
And that resourcefulness, that scrappiness, I think are beautiful skills that make you a very strong competitor in a corporate market. It's very hard to teach scrappiness. It's very hard to teach hustle. And I think that many times those things come from trauma. And so that's the twistedly good thing about having to navigate that. I had to learn that very quickly. And so being a person that can really build a network, being a person that's not afraid to be in a meeting with 20 people and hear someone speak or observe how they move around the room. And then when the meeting's over, not being shy about reaching out to them and saying, hey, Jen, we were just in this meeting. You don't know who I am, but I really loved how you communicated X. I would love to get on your calendar because I need some advice on how to do that one thing you did in that room. I never had a problem with that. Yeah.
So is that how you went about going to go find the people that you could learn from?
Yes, there's one. Two, I'm not going to lie, I am Black. And because in my industry, there are not a lot of Black people, and there's specifically not a lot of Black women. When you saw one in the hallway, it was like, hey, lock eyes. And so that was a helpful way to get to know the environment. And for the record, Black is not a monolith. So I'm not saying that like that's the only way to do it. But a lot of times it was me, maybe in my musical theater mode, observing people. I watch a lot. I talk a lot, but I also watch a lot. And at a very young age, I learned that the type of person that I wanted to be in the corporate world was not just a person of language, but a person of performance and behavior. I wanted to walk the talk. And so whenever I'm in meetings, especially large meetings, I am the person that's watching how people respond to you. I'm listening to the type of words and adjectives you use. I'm watching what you're wearing, not to necessarily judge it, but to be like, oh, that's a very cool way of showing that you're serious, but you're also wearing Chucks. I'm watching all of these things. I'm watching your whole put together presentation, and I'm trying to decide, what do I want to try on from that? right? What are things that I can learn? Even if it's, I learned a lot in the first 4 years of my career. I talked a lot because I was trying to show that I know stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember my 5th year in corporate America, I worked with a leader who was fabulous. And for the record, she was like the highest ranking woman at the company. And I had the privilege to just be in a lot of rooms with her. And the one thing that I took away from her is that you do not have to talk a lot to show power.
Absolutely not.
Now, I'm not going to lie. I still think that I talk more than she does in meetings, but I talk a lot less. And that's
Do you think that?
Yeah.
Do you think that was always the case, or is it at a certain stage in life? So maybe you have some experience under your belt, you have more confidence to do that, or was it the position she was in? Because when you're in that position, you have power, you have status, right?
Oh, yeah, you just walking in, you have power and status. I think it's a mix of both. And I agree with you. I think that the higher ranking you are and the higher ranking other people know that you are. I always tell folks that I mentor, half the battle is not what you are, it's what people think you are.
Mm-hmm.
Because what people think you are will decide how they treat you. And so it's, it's very clear that because she was the highest ranking woman at the company and she was also just very brilliant and very talented, I'm sure she knew that when she walked into rooms, people were going to treat her a certain way. But I actually started getting to know her, and it turns out that she's actually just a quiet person.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. And so we did talk a lot about the strategic way to be more silent and show power. And I had a lot of conversations about that with her. I remember once we walked into a meeting, I pulled her aside. I said, okay, I'm going to try it today. You have to give me feedback. And she was like, okay, Lexi. And so I'm not going to sit there and lie that I had been in rooms with leaders before, but how she was doing it was different. It was very clear that a lot of her active silence wasn't because, oh, I'm a leader, so I can be. It was a strategic, critical move she was making that some leaders don't do as much. Yeah.
Right. Because it is sometimes who talks the most is perceived, right? Because perception is reality. That was my hardest lesson learned in corporate America. It matters what people think of you, not necessarily what's real. So it is a skill to be able to go in there with some kind of confidence and not be able to, speak, that observing, which is what you've learned over the years. And I love that you said scrappy and resourceful, because there are a lot of people who just get into the mentality of my boss sucks. I hate this. There's no resourcefulness there. It sucks. And what do you need to do in the meantime to get out of that situation? Right. Exactly. So you found different strategies to get yourself, I'm guessing, in a better position or aligned.
I try. Every company I move to, people laugh at me, and I'm like, every move that I make, as far as like moving to a different team or moving to a different company, I'm not saying that I left because something negative happened, but I will never move to another thing unless it is more positive, right? Unless it's something that propels me forward. So
not to run away from something just to get out of a situation. It's
and sometimes that situation is not negative. Sometimes this company, this entity, this person is offering me an opportunity to learn new things. But I always tell folks, never, as you build your career, when it's time to leave, for whatever reason, you should be leaving for something even better. I will never leave for something worse or leave for the same thing. That's a waste of my time and energy.
Really? So lateral moves are of no interest to you? Well, wait, let me back it up. So I perceive that as lateral first, but it could, I'm assuming, you tell me if I'm wrong, could be lateral as long as you're learning something new and growing and developing.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I've taken tons of lateral moves before. I had a mentor very early in my career, and they were like, look, titles will come and go. Focus on what makes you feel good. And, this is I'm 22, I'm out of college. My career is the most important thing. You could never tell me that something would be more important than my career, because I'm 22 and in the most loving way, young, dumb, and stupid, and trying to find world peace. And that stupidity is not a bad thing. I think it's a beautiful thing, because you're ignorant. You don't have enough wisdom. And to be frank with you, you don't know yourself enough to know what you value. So what I value right now is my career. And you couldn't tell me that 15 years later, I'd be like, this is not 100% what I value, but okay, we're here.
Right.
Right.
There's other things in the world.
Other things in the world that I should value. Right.
Imagine.
But I had somebody very early in my career, and they set me down and they said that I should not prioritize titles. And I was like, why not? Titles make money. And they said, no, knowledge makes money. And they said, now titles can come with money, short-term money, but knowledge makes long-term money. And so their point was, they're saying, I'm not saying never take a title, like, right. But what they were saying was you need to prioritize learning and prioritize people that will actively teach you. This other stuff, if you prioritize it, you'll get somewhere, but there will be a cliff. And I think what they were saying, and again, I didn't understand it then, but now as leader, I get it now, is that it doesn't matter how sexy your title is. If you're not learning something, there's going to be a ceiling. It doesn't matter who you are. If you're a leader, and Jen, everybody has a boss, right?
Yep. I work for myself. I got lots of bosses.
If your boss does not want to see you succeed, it doesn't matter who your boss is. And so looking back, I'll never forget that conversation, but looking back on that conversation, that's what that person was striving for. It took me a long time to learn the lesson. So I'm not saying that after that lunch that we had, I was like, that makes sense. No, after that lunch that we had, I was like, she's tripping. I'm gonna get this money. Right.
Give me that title.
Right. I was like, this was cute. And no. Right. And it took me about 4 years. It took me about 4 years and a layoff to be like, oh, that's what Felicia was talking about. Okay, I get it now.
Yeah, that knowledge and those skills, right, that are transferable. And I think there's also, and I don't know if it's the same in the tech world, it's that resourcefulness.
Oh, yeah.
Like what I would, like, those are the best people to work with, the people who can figure it out no matter what, right? They're going to find a way.
They're going to find a way. Yeah.
Beautiful skill.
And that's what she was talking about. So shout out to Felicia, one of my many fairy godmothers in the early stages of my career. But yeah, definitely didn't understand it at the lunch. But again, I'll never forget, I saw her the day before I got laid off 4 years later. And then I got laid off and I was like, this is what she was talking about. Life comes at you fast. So yeah.
It does, and it's sunk in. It just takes some time, right? We can't always be on the receiving that wisdom at the time. Now, Lexi, thinking about your values as a leader, and what are some things that are non-negotiable for you?
And it's funny because my team makes fun of me about it, and I'm currently hiring. And I had a team member. The recruiter reached out to my team member to ask about this, and she hilariously said, oh, home training is a non-negotiable for her. And that is
training.
That is the truest statement. So I am from St. Louis, Missouri. And so my grandparents are from the American South, and we have this thing called home training. And basically it's just like, it's having enough EQ to not be rude. Right. So, and that's a non-negotiable for me. Like there are just things that I cannot teach you and I'm not going to. So for example, I always tell people that work with me is like, I don't want to hear how you were mean to someone. There is a way to talk to people. There is a way to engage with people. A really like real-time example is that I do not want to find out that if someone chats you or emails you at work, you actively ignore them because you think they're lower ranking.
Ooh, okay.
So that's what I call home training. It's things like that. You treat everyone as equal. You treat everyone like a human, because I always say, I can teach you the work, and maybe we shouldn't put it on camera, but like, capitalism is not hard. It's not hard. Now the game and the politics around it gets a little more complex and layered. As you know, Jen, but the actual work, it's not hard, right? So I always tell folks, I can teach you how to do the job. And obviously, depending on what level of job that I'm hiring for, some people of a certain level, you need to already know the job. And some people, it's like, oh, we can teach this to you. But what I cannot teach you is just basic human emotion of, I will not tolerate getting feedback from people that you did not treat them like a human. That's not going to work on my team. Everything else can be taught. So there's that one. And then also, and I feel like I sound like my mother when I say this.
We all turn into our parents. You've seen the commercial. It is
we
true.
all do. Do not surprise me. And my team knows that. Don't have me in a leadership meeting and I find out about something that I should know, because then I have to pretend like I knew it, because as your manager, I'm your protector. But best believe we're going to have a hard conversation. I do not like being blindsided. Unless y'all are secretly getting me a birthday cake, I do not want to be surprised.
Good surprises only.
Good surprises only. Okay. And my team is very aware of that. But with that said, if I'm going to have that expectation, then guess what that means? I have to make myself available for my team, because again, corporate stuff goes very quickly, especially in tech. So the number, like, everybody has my number that I work with, the number of text messages or WhatsApps that I get where they're like, yo, your schedule is booked, but I really need to talk to you before 2 p.m. So if I'm going to expect that from you, I have to make myself available for that, right? I put in a lot of effort to build very strong, trusting relationships with my individual team members. They know you can tell Lexi anything. So it's, so you can't ask for, give it to me straight, but then not build an environment where they can give it to you straight and they're not going to feel judged or blindsided or taken action upon because they said their feelings.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. If you do it the first time, then they're just never coming back to you with any of that again.
Right.
Well, as much as I don't like to stereotype, I can consider myself try to be a non-stereotyper, but tech people have a stereotype.
Yeah.
Is it true? Like, challenge me here.
Which one?
Maybe not the most on the, what'd you call it, home training. A little bit. Okay. So like not being the nicest, kind of being curt and I know more than you. That is.
I would argue, which is why that's one of my non-negotiables.
Right. So when that has happened, because I can only imagine in your career that has happened, how did you address it? What do you say to someone who is lacking that piece of emotional intelligence, or how to treat people as a basic human,
So in the early stages of my career, when I didn't have a lot of agency or power, I would have to take it. And I hated it. And that's probably one of the reasons why I'm so protective of my people now, because nobody protected me. Or let me rephrase, a lot of people try to protect me, but the only person that can really formally protect you at work is your manager. So I had a lot of situations where my manager wouldn't protect me, but then I would go vent to other people and they would hold me and give me safe space. I had one manager who in a 3-week time span was in the room when somebody was yelling at me. And I remember the first time it happened, we were in a hallway at work and she stood there while this person yelled at me over something that I didn't do and did not say one thing. And the person walked away and she whispered to me, I'm so sorry that happened. And then I had to go to dinner with her that night. And then at dinner, she made it a joke with the rest of the team. You can't believe what so-and-so said to Lexi. And I felt so small. Because the culture that I come from, if you see bad and you don't do anything, you're also part of the problem. The next week, another person without home training yelled at me in the middle of like a very large room with like working in the room because she did not like an accurate answer that I gave to her question.
She did not want to hear the truth. She did not want to hear the truth.
Right. And my boss sat there and didn't say anything. So like, those are just examples of like, I have been in situations where I have not been protected and people with lack of home training have done things to me and I could not say anything. And so I think those examples gave me ammo where I was like, if I'm in a position of power, that will never happen. And so now that I do have a little bit of power, not a lot, a little bit of power, I make it very clear that the people that I can protect, I'm going to. And so people know that about me. Like my team literally jokes and they're like, we'll just go to Lexi and say, you breathe near us wrong. And it's a wrap, right? And they know that. And I'm the kind of person like, so what happened? what they say? Okay, cool. Now, am I going to go fight with people every day? No, but am I going to walk into your program meeting the next day to feel it out and see what's up? Yes. And can I fight every battle? No. But do you know that I have your back? Absolutely.
So what is that line? Because there's a piece to where you don't want to get into the triangulation. Oh, my people said that you said this about them, right? You can't get into that, like you said. Mm-hmm. But you can't have people yelling at your team either, right? So where do you distinguish between when you need your team to be like, all right, go stand up for yourself, versus when you're coming in there as, I won't say mama bear, but like kind of like, you're protecting them because it's the right thing to do?
Well, number one, I don't protect anyone unless A, they come to me first, because in many rooms I'm not in, or B, I'm in the room and I've just decided, oh, this will not be tolerated in front of me. Right. And for the record, protection is a spectrum, just like sexuality. So like, it doesn't have to be me yelling at you, but can it be as like, oh, Jen, that really didn't feel right in that moment to Gary. Of course, I know you didn't mean it that way, but that didn't really feel right. So let's just get back to the point. So what do you need from my team? Thanks. There's ways to protect without being combative. There's ways to protect without screaming. And I do that a lot. And for the moments that I am not in the room, it's usually my team members coming to me and saying, this is what happened. And it's a conversation. I want to know what happened. I want to know why. I want to know why that made you feel that way, because facts are facts and feelings are feelings, but both are valid. And I say that a lot. So we first have to go to the root of like, why do you feel that way based on what happened? Okay. And then the question is, what do you want me to do about it? And 9 times out of 10, it's really this interesting interactive conversation with them of actively deciding, I'm going to say something, or I'm going to do something, or Lexi, I'm going to let it go. But if it happens again, and I'm like, bet if it happens again, we rolling through. Right. But you do have to teach people how to defend themselves in a professional manner. Because I have been the person that have defended myself in the most unprofessional manner. And that was years and years and years of people treating me a certain way or saying things to me or yelling at me and no one giving me the tools to quote unquote fight back professionally. And so once you keep on taking licks, you're gonna roar. And I definitely had some roaring moments in my career, and that probably wasn't the best long-term solution for me.
And do you normally, like when you're talking to someone, to say, just like you said, you redirect them in a very lovely way? You're setting your boundaries, but you're redirecting. Does that usually get them go, oh, I didn't mean it that way? Or does that course correct them? Or is it hit or miss?
It's hit or miss. But the one thing that does come out of it is they know not with mine. And that's honestly all that I care about, Jen. And I've told people that. I'm like, look, I don't get paid enough to teach all of you to have home training. That's between you, your God, and your mother. Okay? I do not. It is not in my tax bracket, and nor do I want it to be. But what is in my tax bracket is you're not going to do that behavior here. So if you decide to do it over there, well, I still don't like it. I can only go so far. I think also we have to be honest that I have a phenomenal leader who also supports that, who happens to be a white man. So guess what? He can roar around conference rooms and no one say anything. We have to talk about identity layers. We have to talk about how I defend and protect and fight for my people. Unfortunately, looks different than how other people can and cannot because of the many identity layers that I encompass. And I have a phenomenal leader who I enjoy working for, but he also doesn't tolerate lack of home training. I don't know if he would say it like that, but he also doesn't tolerate that behavior. And
wait, have you not introduced that term to him? Because I think this is branded by Lexi.
I don't know if he feels comfortable saying it, but I have. But because of what he looks like, because he is a male, because he is a heteronormative male, and because he's so high ranking at the company, like he's aware that there are certain things that he can say that that I cannot say, that his other direct reports may or may not be able to say, because all of these layers, and he uses that privilege to protect us. So I always tell people at work, like, I will snitch. I will let this man fight the battles that I just don't want to because I deserve. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have spent a lot of time in my career fighting battles that I should not have fought, but I had to. So to have a leader who has my back, who's like, Lexi, I'll help. Just tell me when I need to report, coach. I will take on some of this load. I'm happy to snitch, Jen, because I'm not going to do it all day. But yeah.
Hey, I tell my kids all the time, you snitch. I don't care.
Exactly.
Snitches will not get stitches.
Not
You're
in this
good.
house. Not in this house. Exactly.
As an aside, my 11-year-old's like, snitches get stitches. And then he got in trouble. He snitched like that. Please.
Exactly. He gonna learn. He gonna learn today. Yeah.
I'm fine. Snitch away. Well, let's talk about that. So the dynamic, you mentioned you're obviously a Black woman and working in tons of tech. You've worked in almost every company that's out there.
I walked away from every company because I wanted to. Yes.
Right. How have you had to navigate? Because you've talked about how you've connected with other Black women. Like that was one thing. You've asked people, you've specifically been resourceful, you've been scrappy. But how has that helped you? Because you've had to navigate it. You've had no choice. How has that made you the leader you are today?
I'm still navigating it, right? And I tell people like, the company that I work for and the job that I do and who I work for and who I work with, I feel like is this beautiful present that I've deserved for years and only recently received. This is my favorite team that I've ever worked on. And the work that I've done, I feel so empowered, all these positive things. And I still have to navigate this because the company that I work for sits in capitalism. So I still have to navigate these things. I think the only difference is that I am empowered to navigate them and I have leadership and peers that honor that and support me in navigating it. But the navigation is still there. I think the biggest thing is that because I've had to navigate it, that's probably why I'm so protective of the people that I work with. Because I know what it feels like to have to navigate that and not have anybody watching over you. I think I was born with a pretty intense like EQ. Like even my parents have these crazy stories of me as a child, 2 and 3 years old, like having this EQ of like, ooh, this person doesn't feel good today. I'm going to give them a very long hug. So I think that's just like naturally in me. But I think that because of what I had to go through and still very much navigate, it gives me even a higher IQ. Right. Mm-hmm. Like I'm the person in the room that like, if you twitch a certain way, I'm like, I'm gonna follow up with Jen. Just make sure we good. What was that? Right. And so from this like human to human level of trying to protect maybe the mini Lexi B, it's that. But then also, I'm not going to lie to you. It's definitely helped me career wise from just like the job that I do on a day-to-day basis, because if we're working together and you're not comfortable or happy with the result, or you're not comfortable or happy with this other person in the room for whatever reason, it definitely affects the work. And so I've also recently learned that too, that like EQ is so intriguing because one, it makes you more human in the workplace. And then therefore people want to work with you and for you more. So you'll get more work done. But then also B, like the work is just better quality.
Mm-hmm. You work harder for that person,
off, when you can know the vibe is off and the energy is shifted, and not saying that you're going to say that in a room of 50 people, but then you can reach out to Jen afterwards and say, you know what, can you get breakfast tomorrow? And be like, okay, girl, so like, what's really going on? You can actually fill the gaps before the gaps happen and make this train run a lot smoother. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the power of you being an observer and an introvert and an empath, right? Someone who's like feeling like you're watching, you're seeing all the signs that are sometimes missed by other people. And then you're good one-on-one. So you go out and reach out. So some of these.
I do love a good one-on-one. I do get that. Like, Lexi, we do not have to talk about this. We could chat. I'm like, no, but I want to talk. So like that's also my weakness. Like I would rather be in meetings all day than chat all day. And, as a person who works with tech people, that's kind of annoying to them, but that's just is what it is. So.
Wait, so you'd rather be in meetings?
I would.
Or then when you said
then chatting, the whatever Slack or Microsoft Teams, right? I'm notorious for that. If what I have to write is not less than like, oh, you're still coming to the meeting? Oh, I'm going to be 5 minutes late. I am notorious to be like, can you talk for 2 minutes? Right. And I'm not going to lie. I'm sure there's tons of people that are like, Lexi's getting on my last nerve. And that's also fine too, right? And but yeah, that's it. I'd rather talk to you, because when I talk to you, I can get all of these triggers and then really understand what you're saying and why you're saying it.
Yeah, because an email, a chat, just Slack, all of that is up for interpretation based on your mood. So I get that. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, thinking about leadership, it's obvious that you're very strong in protecting your people. You've said that quite a few times. But what else do you feel like are your natural superpowers as a leader? Or maybe made leads, and maybe it wasn't natural in you, but you've developed and honed over time.
It's very important for me as a leader to know why people are working. And I hate when people say, because I love my job. Girl, you don't love it enough to do it for free. So why are you here? Because if I can build a safe relationship where you feel comfortable telling me that, then I can also curate an experience for you that gets you what you want. And I think sometimes we forget that, right? I think we're talking about it more on social media, like from a personal sense. People talk about their love languages. And I remember when that came out about 10 years ago, when I was, like 10, 15 years ago, when it became more prominent about like this idea that like who you romantically get involved with, sometimes they receive love differently than you. So your job is to figure out, how do you want to receive love? And then if you love them, cater to that. While, for example, like you could say, my love language is gift giving, but if you continue to give someone whose love language is quality time gifts, they're not going to register that you love them, right? It's the same thing in corporate America. Now, it's not necessarily romantic love. That's going to keep y'all in HR. Do not do that. But it is this idea of like, why are you here? What do you want? Oh, that's what you want? And I take that very seriously with my team. And I always tell them, you are more than comfortable to tell anybody what you want. And but I would love to build a relationship with you where you feel comfortable telling me. Because if you can be very honest and say, Lexi, this is what I want in the next 2 years, I can work really hard to align certain things that, one, you get it, and two, my work still gets done. And it's wild when you start asking people in the corporate realm what they really want. I think it's wild, the actual real-time responses that people will probably never say on the internet because it's not corporate enough, right? Because we've been trained with the PR stint of like, I just love doing my job. And behind closed doors, Jen, the conversations that and answers that I've received where it's like, I'm here for fertility benefits. I'm here because right now in my personal life, it's stressful and this job is really easy. Okay. I'm here because I want to get promoted. I'm here because I want to learn this thing. If I know that information, the magic that I can do for you is outstanding. Because if I don't know why you're here, I'm just going to start putting you on work that needs to get done. But if I know why you're here, I can start doing things. Oh, you're here because you really want to learn this one thing. Bet. Here you go.
Yeah.
Go learn it.
Knowing it. Yeah, it's them knowing it. And then you even asking them the question requires them then to think about it. Because if they haven't thought about it to that point, if you're asking them that.
Real talk, 9 times out of 10, most people, when I ask them that in a safe space, they don't have an answer. It's usually people who are a lot more seasoned in their career that have the answer. And so for people that I work with that are more seasoned, it's very like, oh yeah, it's not, I don't know the answer. It's, I don't know you. So we have to build a relationship where I know that information will not be weaponized.
Yes.
Versus when you're in early stages of your career, that's a very hard question to answer. And so I do want to honor that. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, if you don't trust you, then
they're not going to tell you.
They're not going to tell you anyway. Well, what still challenges you about leadership? What is the something that still feels difficult?
Oh my gosh, every day. And it's because people change every day and people's needs on a micro level are different every single day. I think the most challenging thing, what I'm navigating, especially in this, I call it COVID world. I do not call it post-COVID because COVID is still here. It didn't die. I remind people, stop touching people outside. It is still there.
And the flu and RSV and
1, 2, 3. Everything. I'm like, y'all got
norovirus.
Right. Keep your hands to yourself. But a lot of more remote work it's very challenging to engage and build those relationships. And for the record, I am pro remote. So this is nuanced. It is challenging, and I'm totally fine to do the challenge. I think it does require a lot of more vulnerability from me. I think that it's, I was talking to someone a few days ago who's worked with me pre-pandemic and now, and they said, it's interesting, Lexi, how more you've opened up virtually. I'm usually a pretty guarded person, and not, for the record, you don't feel like I'm guarded, but I'm very big at like my private life and my personal life are very different. And so this person was making this, like this observation where they were like, it's very clear that working remote has made you a little less private about your private life. And I thought about it and I was like, well, yeah, like you may see my kid running around in the background and she's at the age where she takes her clothes off. Like, I can't stop that, guys. Right. And the person laughed and they said, but not even that, like, just like you've just opened up more. And I really do think it comes from this place of, if I want to see a change, if I want to build a relationship with you and we're not in person, I have to model that behavior. So I have opened up a little bit more to show people that you can also open up to me.
Get a role model. Yeah.
And that's actually very difficult for me. Like, Jen, I have family members that don't even know that I'm married. So like, this is, it might not be difficult for others. And I love that for them. It is actually very difficult for me. So yeah.
Well, given that, thank you for doing this. I appreciate it, letting us into your life.
Yeah.
Well, Lexi, I know we're going to run out of time. I could talk to you for quite a while. So thinking of you being in tech, what advice do you have for someone who is going to or is striving for leadership, and they've got to get themselves out of that expert role, and they've got to then lead their people to be the expert?
First and foremost, you need to say it out loud. Closed mouths don't get fed. The number of people that I've met, I get a lot of LinkedIn messages about career advice, and I try to respond to all of them. I really, really do. And the conversation, I'm like, well, what do you want? I don't know. Or it's, I know what I want, but I haven't said that. Why not? So one, whatever you want, whether it's to move to Wakanda tomorrow and work remotely there, whether it is to become a leader, you need to start saying it. If you don't say it, then people cannot help you. And every company is different when it comes to leadership. You have some companies that are like, oh my gosh, Jen is the best coder in the room, make her a manager. I don't think that's the way you should bring leaders up, but tomato, no one asked my opinion, Jen, at that company. But you need to start saying what you want. And when you start saying what you want, you'll be very intrigued by the number of people that'll be, oh, you want that? I'm not good at that, but this person over here is good at that. And so that's the first thing. Say what you want. Second thing is that you need to start modeling that behavior. I do not think that you are a leader because you manage people. I tell my team all the time, all of you are leaders and you need to act as such. And so what does it look like to act like a leader? What does it look like to not be late to every single meeting? What does it look like, even when you are late, to know what you're talking about? What does it look like to come prepared in the room? What does it look like to help someone? What does it look like at work to never say no to people? And when I say that, for the record, boundaries are blessings. This is nuanced. I say no to people all the time. They just may not know that I'm saying no. It is a very rare occasion where I'm at work and I'm like, absolutely not. A lot of the time it's like, I don't know if my team can support that, but can I help you find the right person? It's, you know what? I'm going to get on this call to listen to you. Nope, but I do have this slide deck, right? And so I always tell my team is that part of being a leader is to be open to the yes and approach or the no and approach, but you just can't say no. What does it look like to know that you're going to have to do extra work? And those are, I think, very important things. But yeah, the first thing, say it.
Yeah.
Because once you say it, and more importantly, tell either your manager or tell a leader that you are safe with, then they can start helping you at that company put it into practice, because every company is different. every company twerks a little bit different,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so in order for you to become a leader, you have to know what two-step your company is conforming to. And the best thing is to start saying it. I want to be a manager here. What does that look like?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I love that. And one thing you just said got me thinking is like, what does it look like for me not to be the expert? What was someone else being the expert and leading a team of experts, right?
Yeah.
Because I like that. You're just putting yourself in the, okay, let me just put this hat on. What does it look like to be a leader in the company? And then these things are going to change. And what does that even look like? Maybe that'll make you think if you even really want to be
one.
one.
Record, I think that not being the expert in the room can make you a phenomenal leader. Leaders who are not experts, leaders who are not leading, leaders who are not an expert at what they lead, they're still a leader because they might not be the expert, but they know how to encourage the experts to get their job done. They know how to put the right people in the room. They know how to actively listen. They know how to ask very interesting questions. Because remember, if you're in a room full of experts, 9 times out of 10, they're too busy experting with themselves. They forget that like other people exist. And so therefore, being the person in the room that's like, hey, family. So not everybody in the world thinks like this. And all of you sound like you're bringing Latin back. So I'm going to stand here and we're just going to sit down and we're going to un-Latinize whatever the hell you just said. Why? Because you're going to have other people at the company to help you actually get this done. And so if you walk in there with this, they're going to walk away. So yes. I don't know what you're saying either. So selfishly, this is for me to understand what's going on. But I think there's a way that I can package this where then we can get finance engaged. You can get your money and then we can get marketing engaged. You get your campaign. And then we can get this leader in legal engaged so they can make sure we don't break any laws. But right now, what you're doing and how you're doing it, they're not going to work about you.
Yeah, I love it. Just asking that question, getting their head out of the game, right? Yes. And just, what does it look like for the rest of us?
I do that a lot with engineers. Yes.
I can only imagine. For a fun fact, I'm married to a former good computer programmer. So
you understand. I'm married to one too. And even in love life, you're like, okay, so what? Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Very, very, very different. Yeah. Let's just say that. All right. So Lexi, where can people find out more about you or connect with you?
Yes, I love LinkedIn. I think it's the coolest place ever. So please find me on LinkedIn. My name's under Lexi B. And then I also have a website because I do lots of speaking engagements. I love to do speaking engagements around this topic, around like finding your purpose in corporate America and all the fun things. And it's www.lexib.com. So, yeah.
I will link that up in the show notes. But before we finish, is there anything you want to leave the listeners with? Anything I didn't ask you or just anything that's coming to mind before we end?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing that comes to mind through our conversation is that you cannot be a leader unless you know who you are. And so I think the very first step, even before you say out loud, I want to be a leader, is you need to take an active and militant stance in understanding you, in understanding what you tolerate and what you don't tolerate, really understand what makes you sad and what makes you happy and all of those things. And that is a never ending journey. So there's not like, oh, and we stop after 2.5 years of therapy. But I cannot express that enough. The best leaders in the world really know themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's a constant journey.
Really know themselves and are comfortable with themselves, including their weaknesses. That's a recommendation. Yeah. Get to know you. Yeah.
Well, Lexi, thank you so much. This has raised my energy level since the beginning. So thank you for giving me that energy. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you for having me. It was an honor.